What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Swingman podcast. It's podcast number 113. As ever, I'm your host, George St. Ledger, joined as I am all the time by Louis Halpin and Lewis Howard. Basically, this one is going to be an all-star Snubs podcast, and we're going to dabble in some of the NBA trade deadline stuff and also touch on LeBron James he will be breaking the NBA scoring record very soon, and potentially he already has when you're listening to this podcast. Before we start, chaps, are you well? Lewis has jumped straight out of the shower, as we can see from some hair. I wasn't too rushed. Yeah.
Man United won, Arsenal lost. All is good.
Louis, do you concur with that?
Yeah, I guess the opposite, really. Can't win them all, can you?
No, indeed. I think we start with as is on the banner down below. Let's start with some all-star snubs in particular. Now, I remember when I was in some form of consciousness, drifting in and out of sleep, watching. I think it was a Thunder game at the time. Seeing these all-star snubs come out, and my biggest one, I mean, I don't know about you two. I remember I put it straight in the group chat, thinking it was an absolute disgrace that James Harden has been snubbed from All-Star. But upon reflection and some moments away, I'm not quite sure it's the biggest snub of them all. Do you two have your sort of who you think's been completely robbed from an All-Star spot?
I'd go Harden or Sabonis, personally. I think...
Oh, Sabonis.
Oh,
he's that shocked. It's broken his internet.
You know what? I realised as soon as I started that happened. I'd go, as I said, Sabonis or Harden, because I think the difference is I think Harden's had the better season. It's close, but I think Harden's had the better season and he's on the better team. But if you look at who maybe got in ahead of them, then maybe you'd say Sabonis was the biggest snub. I think it depends how you look at it. If you're looking at the player or the players that got in ahead of them.
I thought Sabonis made the All-Star too.
Oh, no, sorry. I was talking about starters.
The starting lineup.
My bad. Yeah.
I agree with you on the starting lineup.
Yeah. Harden, 100%. I completely forgot about that.
There's a couple, I guess, that I'm running through in my head. If I was... going from a starting perspective, because you just said about Sabonis, I think he should have been starting over Zion. Zion's played.
Yeah.
He's played great, but he's not played enough games. I was kind of worried about like Anthony Davis kind of sneaking in there, despite the fact he's played like 20 games. Because he's just like a fan favourite, plays for the Lakers and everything like that. I wasn't too bothered. I think, George, you said something about Jaylen Brown not making a starting lineup over Kyrie. Kyrie was the one, I guess, that people maybe debated a little bit. I'm not actually too bothered about Kyrie starting. I think he's perfect for an All-Star. He's like a fan favourite. He's perfect for the All-Star game. He's been playing really well this season as well. I think I would have put Halliburton actually in the starting lineup because I think he's just so important to that Pacers team. You've seen since he's been out how much they've dropped off, but it's kind of a toss-up there. I'm not too
starting over Kyrie or starting over.
Yeah, that would have been my one. I don't really care that much. It's kind of a toss-up between him, Jaylen Brown, and Kyrie. It doesn't really matter to me. I saw most of the people I think that I wanted to in the reserves. I will say I think Drew Holiday shouldn't be in the All-Star game, in my opinion, in the All-Star team. I don't think he's been good enough to warrant that, especially because he's the point guard of, I think the Bucks are like the 27th rated half-court offense. He's not exactly screaming out, entertaining to watch. Not that
If I'm going to Utah, I'm not going to see Drew Holiday in an All-Star game. I like Drew as a player, but not for this season as an All-Star.
I agree. I don't think he's been. It's weird that this is the season they've chose as opposed to some of the other ones where I think he's been more deserving. So yeah, he's the one I would take out, and I think James Harden could be in there, but I do think also Jalen Brunson has a really good case. I'd have put him in as my like New York Knicks representative over Julius Randle because I think. You've just seen because he's changed that team pretty significantly from last year. His impact's there. And who's the other one? Darius Garland. I think Darius Garland has been kind of going under the radar because Donovan Mitchell's there, obviously. So that's the biggest snub I can say. I would have liked to have seen Anthony Edwards in there or even De'Aaron Fox. But there's such a big pool of talent now. You're going to have to expect there's going to be some pretty big people missing out, basically.
Yeah.
I think... Go on, Liz.
Okay.
I think you take the floor, mate.
The issue with the East, as I said before when I was talking about Harden, is I think you can look to a lot of these players that missed out, but it's a question of who you take out to put them in. Like I know, George, we were talking before, and I said, I'd probably take maybe Randall out for James Harden, but then you look at what Randall's done for the Knicks, and obviously it sounds harsh to say you'll take Randall out after he's put up, I think it's like 24, 10 and 4 or something like that. And the Knicks have got quite a good record. So you can say that they're snubs, but when you look at who's come in, like Drew Holiday, for example, I know you lot said that you maybe don't want him in there because of the fact it's an all-star and the way he plays, and so you might even want someone like Trae Young over him potentially. But I think personally for me, just based off the merit of how they've played this season, I would have Drew Holiday in. So at the end of the day, it's a preference thing. The one thing I will say that I did want to bring up, I find it kind of weird. I don't know if it's just an American-centric thing or maybe it's just people from Europe that might find it weird, or the rest of the world, but I find it odd that the NBA does an MVP ladder itself. Because I know some of the arguments people saying Harden's like 7th on the MVP ladder, so how is he not in the All-Star game? And I know that was some of the argument for Embiid starting. I just find it strange that the actual organisation itself does its own MVP ladder and says, look, everyone, this is who you should be voting for MVP or maybe.
Yeah.
Is that based off actual advanced metrics and statistics, or is that not? I thought that's probably more something to do with, because I assume that MVP ladder will be sponsored in some way. So I assume that's the reason that they do it.
It's a Kia MVP ladder, but I just find it weird that it's on their official website.
Got you. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one in that regard. I know what you mean. It'd be like if the Premier League started doing its own player of the season ladder. I don't ever see that happening. So yeah, it's a fair point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The other one I want to mention in terms of All-Star snubs, though, like for me, I mean, James Harden was my definite one. But on reflection, I think Jimmy Butler's it's been quite harsh to leave Jimmy Butler out. I can't lie.
Yeah, because he's kind of had the same season he always has, about like 23 points, 22 points, something like that. The Heat aren't great, but they're not terrible. They're like, he's usually always in there for basically what he does. And they put Bam in there as well. They've been like, that's our Heat guy, which is interesting, I think. Pascal Siakam, I think I saw he's the only player to average over 25 points, like 8 rebounds, 6 assists to not make the All-Star game, which is pretty significant as well, but they're also not great. I think it's interesting, like an interesting window on, because I believe the starters are pretty predominantly determined by fan votes. I don't think the reserves are as much. I think those are coaches and players who vote for those, and that's weighted more towards them.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing that I was going to say, because like, I mean, it's no hate on Drew Holiday at all, and also how like DeMar DeRozan is in there over a Jimmy Butler and a James Harden is a bit perplexed to me. They're my sort of.
I think he's been good. I think he's been good.
He's been good, but I mean, but this is where, and this is where I always talk about how these sort of things are determined. Where I mean, the Bulls are sitting under 500. They are 9th. They've not been good in general. Jimmy Butler's like, in my head, I'd have thought Jimmy Butler missed loads and loads of games. He's played 37. Like, he's not like he's missed loads. Same thing with James Harden. I can't see in how both these teams are better than the Bulls, quite clearly. And I would say that they've probably had. I know DeMar DeRozan's been very good for the Bulls in that regard, and you can and you can probably look around in terms of his sort of scoring percentages and how well he's helped that team. But I can't find an argument where I can see a viewpoint that DeMar DeRozan has been more influential than James Harden or Jimmy Buckets for either their teams for how well they're doing this year. That's where do you now draw the line of where do you pick an all-star guy? Because like, you're never going to look at someone at like the Magic or the Hornets at the moment, but like, where's it come from?
Yeah, it's one of those ones where it's, do you go for the more team-based, you put your decision more team-based, or do you put it further towards looking at the individual player themselves? Because I do think DeRozan individually has probably had a better season than Jimmy. It's close, but then when you factor in the teams, maybe then you lead Jimmy. I think Jimmy suffered because the Heat are usually, people usually quite high on the Heat over the past couple of years, and they've brought it back a little bit, but they have had somewhat of a drop off during the regular season, or they had maybe when the stirrings for the All-Star just started coming about. And I think he's probably suffered because of that.
I mean, what would you rather see? Would you rather base it off just completely disregard team rankings? Would you rather it be completely solely on players, or do you want to have the mixture? Like, how would you like to see the All-Star thing formatted? Because we always see the structure moaned at on terms of like Embiid's not a starter, even though he's in and around potentially being the MVP of the league. Do you want to see it just on player performances and completely disregard what the team is like? Would you like to see potentially someone from the Magic if they're sitting there at 35 points a game, but they're losing if they're losing 4 out of 5 games, is he an all-star? Like,
it depends entirely on context for me. That's not really an answer to it, but like you got to take it on a case by case basis. I feel like if you're putting up like, so say if someone was putting up like 33 on like the Magic or the Hornets, like you said, they would make the All-Star game. That's just how
they would.
I think they would. I mean, I say this, and Trae Young's not in there. He's averaging 27, but I think that's more of a window into what players and coaches may think about Trae Young. It may be even a window into what they may think about James Harden a little bit, because it's just what players respect, and that's why Drew Holiday I think is in there, because a lot of the players in the league respect him. So I think it's on a real case by case basis. I quite like it when there's a lot of different teams represented in, and I have no problem with DeMar DeRozan being in over Jimmy Butler, and I can't remember who the other guy you said was. It Siakam or no? It was the guy higher seed or James Harden. Yeah, James Harden.
Yeah.
Or Jimmy Butler, because I think without him that team is absolutely. I mean, they're 9th now. They're languishing like near the bottom seeds. He's just important to that team. So I guess I can try and differentiate between when I think a guy's just putting up big numbers on a bad team to when he's actually doing something important and valuable. And I think All-Star is different to All-NBA personally. So I'm not going to be too hung up on who gets in there. I think some like fun guys deserve to be in there, but also some guys maybe who don't often get the recognition, like Jaren Jackson Jr., for example. You can probably argue him a little bit.
He was a controversial one as well, I saw on Twitter, especially when it all came out.
It reminds me of when Rudy Gobert used to get in there, sort of like last couple of years. He's probably the defensive player of the year so far this season, or he's up there. I guess your mileage may vary.
Well, he's getting a very large amount of blocks per game, whether or not they're validated and true because of the whole thing with the scorers potentially outdoing them in home games. I don't know if either of you know about that, but
what's that?
So there's a whole thing that it was a post that was done on Reddit, and then it just absolutely blew up, and then took it from there. Essentially, the at home games there has been some, for lack of a better word, jiggery pokery going on with the blocks recorded for Jaren Jackson Jr. being potentially inflated, allegedly inflated.
They've been cooking the books.
I don't know by the percentage. I haven't read the full Reddit post, but I got the gist of it. Essentially, that they normally have to get sort of reduced after a game if they get looked at under a certain microscope. So
that is interesting. I didn't know that that's how they recorded statistics. I didn't know that the home.
I don't think it's. Yeah, I don't think it's a particular. Yeah, I don't think it's a potentially home staffed approach. I think I'd assume it's done by the NBA themselves, but there's just been some funny findings within Grizzly home games and Jaren Jackson Jr. blocks upon reflection of the games. That was what was being alleged. So, but I mean, anyway, in any case, whenever you watch him, I still think even if they're inflated by a little bit, he's still dominating in terms of blocks in the NBA at the moment. So it's not really like that deep, but yeah.
His defensive impact is, and that's the thing. Do you really want to see a defensive impact in an All-Star game? It's an imperfect model, I guess. It's just who you think deserves the recognition, because these things lead to like salary bonuses, and they're quite important. And I can understand why people get.
I always remember Klay Thompson's one where he got that was all NBA, wasn't it? Where he missed out on that. Actually, he missed out on a lot of money because he didn't get put in the All NBA team when he really should have. And that interview straight after, he was very calm considering how much money he just missed out on for being how shaky he was for it. But
do you remember Rudy Gobert missing out a couple of years ago as well, and just like cried in the press conference?
I don't remember that one. I remember the Klay one. I don't remember. No, I don't remember the Rudy one.
Oh, okay. That was that must again be like monetarily motivated. I can't imagine.
Yeah, they all are.
He's too
It's
much.
100% money.
So but different reactions to these. Some people can go on, I think, to have like amazing seasons after being snubbed from these types of things. So we'll see. Maybe James Harden absolutely ends the season on a tear. Maybe Anthony Edwards takes it up a level as well. Who knows? But there's a lot of candidates basically this season for it.
I don't really know what much more James Harden's meant to really be expected to do. I'd say that I'd argue. I know it's still you've not won anything. There's nothing done there, but the way in which he's changed his game to adapt and work well with Embiid, considering what everyone had him as the perceptive player when he left Houston, went to Brooklyn, and really failed there. He has changed his game quite well, but I mean, I don't really know what much more he can sort of do to improve upon. Potentially a bit more scoring, but then you're taking the ball out of the hands of Embiid, and right now you don't really want to do that. So, any case,
he's got some pretty big things going against him, I think, in terms of perception. I guess just people don't like the way he plays sometimes, and he's never won a championship. He's had some pretty big choke jobs, you would say.
No, definitely.
If I'm being fair.
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about it, you can't talk about he's had definitely more than one occasion to show up in the playoffs, and he's let a few people down more than one time.
The Sixers are doing really, really well at the moment, aren't they? So
they are. It's just all of these teams after All Star is when you start to see where they're realistically going to be come the break from it. In any case, let's move on. Let's talk about the trade deadline preview. So the big news that came essentially, what was it? Was it last night? 2 nights ago? 2 nights ago, I believe.
Yeah.
On the Thursday night, I want to say, Kyrie Irving requested a trade from the Brooklyn Nets, and also stating that he won't be looking to sign an extension with them anyway. There's 2 things on this. 1, do you think that that's the right decision for Kyrie to be taking? And also 2, realistically, where are there trade spots for him? Because I'm not sure particularly who is going to want to give him $200 million in the offseason, because what team realistically has that cap space to give him 200 mil, and also a team that Kyrie would be interested in joining? Like, it's a really, really strange one. And obviously he's not happy in Brooklyn for whatever reason, but it's a really, really funny sort of scenario. Yet again with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah. I mean, as you say, Kyrie is back in the news again, and whether it's the right decision for him or not, I mean, that's completely up to him. He is, still one of the best point guards in the NBA. I think a lot of teams would be happy with him. It's just a question.
You're back again.
This is horrendous today. I was just saying it. I think he's one of the best point guards in the NBA still, obviously. I think most people would agree with that. And it's just whether a team believes that he wants to be there long term. And I think there's a couple that the Lakers being the main one, whether they could trade for him or not now, I don't know. I'd say it's unlikely, even though it seems he definitely wants to be there and LeBron definitely wants him there. But I think they're one team that he'd definitely be happy to stay with. I know the Mavs and the Heat are 2 more that have been touted to maybe get him. I think the Mavs, it's an interesting one because obviously they got rid of Jalen Brunson and now maybe bringing Kyrie in, they'd go back to that 2 very offensive guard setup, him and Luka. It'd be interesting to see how that would work. And then the Heat just need someone to help with their offense because it's still, there's still a decent team and they've been a very good team a couple of years prior, but their offense always looks a bit stagnant and it never flows well. Kyrie might not help with the flow, but he'll definitely help with the scoring. So,
yeah, I mean, to give some context, I think the reason he wants out of Brooklyn is because he was interested in signing an extension there, I think, but I think they offered him like an incentive-based contract. Like if we win the championship, you get this much money, which is quite commonplace, I think, in like football when we watch football. But I don't think it's quite as they want the guaranteed money basically in basketball, and I think it's a bit of an insult if you offer something like that. So that's the reason he has just suddenly come out and demanded it. which is just so on brand for him. It's just like a couple weeks of great basketball, then just some crisis that he's somehow influenced. This time, I don't think it's entirely his fault, actually. So I'll give him that. Yeah, I think I can't think of any other candidates, to be fair, that you haven't mentioned there, because, like you said, it's going to revolve around a lot of moving pieces, and there's only so many teams that can probably gamble on maybe the instability that he may bring. That sort of like, you never know what this guy is going to be like from day to day, on a day-to-day basis. I do really think the Mavericks should push hard. It's not a perfect fit, because obviously both those guys are quite ball that they sort of rely heavily on having the ball in their hands, Luka and Kyrie. Yeah, Brunson, it probably is a better fit in retrospect, but they couldn't keep him, so that is what it is at this stage. I just think they can't really waste too many more years of Luka without getting a little bit worried whether he'll re-sign. You know, we had it with Giannis a couple of years ago. They need to put around a team that can actually win a championship, because right now he's playing with a bunch of role players, if I'm quite honest. And I do think they probably have maybe the best package to offer. I don't think any of them are going to set the world alight, any trade packages that you get for Kyrie. The Lakers certainly won't. Can you imagine a team of Russell Westbrook, Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton all on the stack? You couldn't do it. You just couldn't do it. There would be absolutely no spacing whatsoever. I mean, I think Ben Simmons and Nick Claxton at this moment is a bit of an issue, let alone with Russell Westbrook. But they do have some enticing picks, you would say. Those 2 first-round picks could be very, very high. So that's up there. And I don't think they want Kyle Lowry. And the Miami Heat always are quite good. So in terms of I don't know what picks they could offer, actually. But if they can do, I don't know if they'd be very good picks. So I'm looking here more, I think, the Lakers and the Heat. Not the Heat, the Mavericks. I'm not sure if anything gets done, though. I will say this, though, like a big star being traded mid-season, I'm not sure when that has worked, and that has led a team to a championship, like Jimmy Butler going to the Sixers. Who was the other one a couple years ago? I mean, just on a smaller scale, like I remember the Bulls trading for Vucevic, Sabonis going to the Kings last year. It didn't really, Harden even going to the Sixers as well. It didn't really click just like that. A mid-season trade is pretty difficult to figure into things when you've got like a big star coming in. So I don't think this is going to help any of these teams this season, but the Mavs is the one I want to see the most.
I think at the minute, I mean, I do agree. It's hard normally to justify when these sort of guys move in and around mid-season, especially when they're such big star players and they're going to demand a usage rate that's so high. It can mess up the flow of the team.
Yeah.
I think with the Lakers, again, I agree. I can't really see... I can't see the Lakers giving the 2 first-round picks when they know that if they wanted to sign him, realistically, they could in the offseason. I know the money's an issue, but they could sort that out in terms of moving some guys on and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the Heat, for me, is the more likely situation. But the only thing I see from it is I don't know if they're going to be worried about putting Kyrie in the situation with Jimmy and Bam and all of this sort of stuff. Kyle Lowry has been nothing short of terrible so far for the past sort of 15 games now. He's been dreadful. And backup Gabe Vincent's a good backup, but he's nowhere near good enough for there to be a starting point guard on the Miami Heat team. They've got nice assets they can trade. Tyler Hero would most likely be on the table for it. I can only assume. I don't know about their picks, but is Kyrie Irving enough
for Kyrie? I'm sorry, then.
Do you not think? But what I don't know what picks they've got. So this is where I'm coming into it, where I don't know what else they could give for
Robinson's got to be in there, hasn't he? Surely, Duncan Robinson.
He's making mad money. He's making mad money.
Yeah, but you got to fill the salaries. But they're not going to give Tyler Hero away for Kyrie. I wouldn't do that personally.
The issue with the Heat, when you consider what they're going to do in a trade for Kyrie, is once you look at what they're going to give up, it's one of those ones where it falls either way. It's either going to be you look at some of the players, the Heat just won't do the deal. I agree with Louis. I think they just wouldn't put Tyler Hero in a deal for Kyrie in mid-season now. And then you look at the other players like Kyle Lowry or Duncan Robinson, and the Nets just aren't going to want it. So it's hard to see where they'd really meet in the middle for a deal.
Can I throw one out there? Actually, thinking about it now. Suns, Chris Paul for Kyrie.
that was taunted about in terms of a trade happening, but what I can't see how that even works.
It's the most win-win trade I think you get, actually.
It's the only win-win trade that both teams can quote unquote compete still, but
yes, it's not perfect for either.
It's not a nice trade at all.
But I mean, talking it out a little bit, they get that sort of like the Nets get a stabilizing presence a bit more, you know, for like whatever this comes down to. Like KD is what's going to determine how far the Nets go. But having the injury issues with Chris Paul are something that you have to take into account. But Kyrie doesn't want to be there, and if he doesn't want to be there, it makes life very, very difficult. And especially because they've kind of cultivated a pretty good atmosphere around that team now after starting so terribly. I think you just want a guy like that out. Personally, I think Chris is still okay. He's not as good as he was a couple years ago.
Do you think the Suns would try and put DeAndre Ayton in the deal as well and try and get
that's
back?
A good one. Yeah. He doesn't. It's not looking great there, is it? Really?
They've got some other nice players like Cam Johnson's all right. I mean, Mikal Bridges, I think they try and keep hold of.
Oh yeah. But what's Ayton's value particularly? Just like an overpaid average big man.
He's above average as a big man. He's above average. He's just not enjoying life in Phoenix. That's clearly it.
Above average, but you could probably get a center that does a lot of the stuff that DeAndre Ayton does for like 40 million less than he earns. Like he earns a lot of money.
It's where you'd want to spread the funds. Yeah, I agree. But
saying
his average is definitely hard.
He's been average this season. He's been average this season, probably a bit below.
The issue with the Suns, though, is from everything I've seen, I think they're more in the market for Fred VanVleet more than anyone else. I think Kyrie might change it, but I still think as a long-term view, they'd probably want VanVleet more than Kyrie, which is mental to say, but that's the gist that I get from it, from when I've read stuff before.
I'm just tired of
VanVleet's. I don't know why I'm struggling to say Fred VanVleet. It's a bit of a tongue twister when you say it too fast. It is a bit of a tongue
twister. The Raptors thing is just so confusing. Like all of their players that are supposedly up for trades, I've kind of given up trying to find where I think they're going to go. I think OG Anunoby is the one I'm pretty certain will move.
He looks like he wants out as well. He's been there's so much vocal stuff about him wanting to get out. So I think, and there's no smoke without fire, I think, with these things. But
I mean, I think both of you quite like him. Some of the stuff I'm seeing floated about for like what you'd have to give up to get OG Anunoby is crazy because he is just like a high-end role player.
2 first rounds, isn't it?
Yeah, that's mental.
Yeah, but this is the issue because of a certain stifled tower that got traded. Everyone's sort of trade values are out of, I think it was Caruso they were demanding 2 first rounds for. Like Caruso's a great player. Is he 2 first round picks? I don't know, but
the stuff going around for OG was definitely too much for most. Although I did see there was apparently there was a few reports about certain NBA teams being willing to give up a first round for OG, which is it's not 2, but even when you look back at years gone by, not that far away. Even that seems like a lot.
Yeah, I'm not really appreciating the I guess the assumption thrown out there that the Minnesota Timberwolves has absolutely ruined the trade market.
Yeah,
it's like the Todd Bowley effect, really. It just pays some crazy money and it just ruins everyone else, which I think is a great idea, personally.
I think actually the more I think about it, I think the Suns is probably going to be the best bet with Brooklyn if they want to get a decent trade back, because also Seth Curry's not looked comfortable since he's come back and he's not really enjoying life at Brooklyn from what I can see. Joe Harris, I'm not having it. Joe Harris has just been terrible, so there's not really an asset there. But you're probably right in terms of an equal trade in terms of just pure counterparts. That's probably the best bet that they'll get for it. But then this is what I mean. For Kyrie Irving, you're going to want to go somewhere as well that he's want to potentially sign on, because he's not going to go to like the Rockets, the Spurs, or any of those guys in the offseason. That's not going to be appealing to him whatsoever. So it's a really, really strange one. And do you think he'll be the catalyst that once that trade happens? Because the deadline, was it the 9th or was it the 7th?
It's 9th.
I want to say it was the 9th. Yeah, it's the 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Once that happens, that'll be as soon as one of them goes. It could even be. Do you remember the whole thing with what's his face on ESPN? It was like there was a trade that happened, and it's the whole meme that came with it. So Brian Windhorst. It's a very, very strange trade, and then it noticed that everyone dominoed from there. When that first trade, that not even a big one goes through, that's when you know. That's what I love to see when underdog pops up with that, and you see a trade go through, and then they all tick on afterwards. That's what will be the exciting one. Yeah, do you ultimately believe? Do you believe though that Kyrie will go before the 9th, or do you think there is a chance he stays?
I think there's a chance he signs an extension. I think they may give. He's saying that I think they may give him a max, and I think this is maybe a little bit of posturing. That's just a thought in my head.
Oh, yeah, this is politics. Oh, okay.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, he's. I don't know how committed they are to that, given the issues they've had to deal with over the years and everything. There's a chance for that, but in my head, I think it's more likely that he goes. Yeah, I don't think they want to keep him around. He'll probably make Ben Simmons even more sad than he already is. Ben's not having a great time at the moment on the basketball court. There's another guy I'd be like, I'm kind of close to cutting my losses on that. Maybe give him another season, but good God. Sorry, a bit of a tangent.
It's more that they need to decide what they're doing with the Ben Simmons, Nick Claxton thing with that, because you can't play both of them in a playoff series. You can't play both of them in a playoff series because neither of them can shoot a free throw. But
no,
yeah. I'll tell you what, Nick Claxton's actually been playing pretty well this year as well. So
if you gave me the choice, I'd rather keep Nick Claxton than Ben Simmons.
Yeah, that is 2023 for you in a nutshell. What a mental statement this is.
I mean, I think if
you're talking 2 years ago and you heard that 2 years ago yourself that just said that, you're laughing to yourself.
If you put it in the context of how much they help the team right now, I don't think you can argue for Ben Simmons. But obviously, when you take into account the fact that he's, the potential he has, I know everyone talks about potential all the time with Ben Simmons, and obviously that makes it a much more difficult conversation to have between the two.
The thing is,
I think Philly. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, in terms of potential, I agree, but I think he needs to be in an environment like San Antonio, where there's absolutely no eyes on him whatsoever, where he can develop and kind of get his confidence back a little bit. I thought it might help being with other superstars in Brooklyn, but realistically, it just kind of shines a light on his. It just shines a light on his weaknesses even more. Probably not more than it was in Philly, but it's still not great. So I think a nice little Popovich rehabilitation program would be nice for him, but yeah, I don't see that happening. It's a bit, or even OKC, somewhere like that where no one cares what he's doing really, but probably not going to happen.
The other one I wanted to mention is John Collins. Do you think he's going to get moved?
I don't know, but it definitely seems like both parties are pretty, handshake. We want this to happen. So, if there's one that might be, it's hard because whenever I look at anything that John Collins is involved with trade wise, it's just not that appealing either way. So I think they're just kind of stuck with trying to figure out the best way to move him on.
John Collins it's like if you walk past the shop every day for 2 years and there's like a thing at the front. It's been like on discount sale for like 2 years and no one's touched it. That's not even me kind of like hating on it a little bit, but he has been in trade rumors for absolutely ages and no one seems to really want to put their chips on the table.
There's obviously teams that want him. I assume the asking price is still too much.
Yeah, no, there are definitely going to be teams that could do with it. Probably were teams that could do with. It's the same with Miles Turner. Miles Turner was in trade rumors for ages, and I really like Miles Turner. Signed an extension there now, and
I think John Collins could do very well at the Nets. That's a decent little
he could do
piece. They need some size as well, but I don't know how it works.
He can shoot. I think there's shoot as well. So
there's I mean, the more I think about it, there's so many players that need to like. I know we mentioned OG Anunoby. Gary Trent Jr. 100% is going to get traded, I think. But it's where these trades align. And this is where it will get tricky and then it will get sloppy and messy towards the back end. So it'll be an interesting one to watch. But as I say, so you think he's going to sign an extension, Kyrie Irving, in terms of Brooklyn, Louis?
No,
Lewis,
I don't think he will do. I think I think it's I think it's highly possible. If I had to make a bet, though, I'd say it's probably.
So
gonna go.
on the 10th of February, where's Kyrie Irving playing his basketball? Let's just, I mean, out on a whim. Just no one knows. Like,
I think probably the Phoenix Suns. But my second option is he's still at the Brooklyn Nets and he's there long term.
right.
You know what? I will say to go along with that, I think it's more likely that he'll sign an extension than they just keep him till the end of the season. So if I pose with those two scenarios, I'd go with the extension. But I'll just throw one out there randomly, and I'll say he'll be at the Mavs.
The Mavs. Okay, I mean, I'll play devil's advocate then. So, come the 10th of February, LeBron James will have his crown, and he'll also have his favourite number 2 guy back at the Lakers with him. I almost want to see. I want to see it more because I'd love to see how Simmons, Claxton, and Westbrook would look on a floor together at the same time. I think that's more why I want to see that. But is there anyone else that you want to talk about in terms of trade deadline previews or buyers and sellers?
Same exercise for I can't think of someone rubbish now to make the joke. But I was going to say, where do you think OG Anunoby actually ends up? I think he will go. And in my head,
I genuinely have no idea.
Yeah,
I just don't know what the trade package for him looks like.
Did you say Memphis?
Selling point is and what other teams will be willing to pay. I know the picks have been thrown about there, but I feel like at this point with players in like that mid-level, I just have no idea what the actual worth of they are and what teams are willing to pay for them.
I mean,
go on.
I was going to say, I think Memphis is in my head, the most perfect fit for him. Memphis or Cleveland, I would like to see. I can also see the Phoenix Suns in that regard. The Phoenix Suns going to get everyone.
You haven't mentioned the team that I thought might trade for him. Ooh. I think we're going to go a little. We mentioned it in a prior podcast. I think we might see some Oregon moves, and Shaedon Sharp might be put in a deal.
No way. No way.
I think that's what could happen.
No, you've got to keep Shaedon Sharp. That team's at the end of the road. That's another one. We haven't even talked about Portland. They should be blowing it.
No, but this is the thing. Do you blow it up, or do you then try and salvage it and keep Dame happy and get some decent picks or some decent assets? Because like OG Anunoby is a great little player to go alongside of Damian Lillard. Like Jeremy Grant, great little player. They've got some pieces. I mean, Nurkic is out, but they've got to do something. They can't do nothing, I don't think.
Shop them all that aren't Lillard at the end of the season or something along those lines, I think. I don't know about, as Louis said, trading to try and make themselves better now. I think it's just not happening.
Can't we just give Lillard an actual chance to win it? I guess he doesn't. It's him more than anything. He's said about hundreds of times, I want to stay at Portland, win a championship in Portland. But can we not? It's just sad. I want to see him actually compete at the very. He's never had a chance of winning a title.
He's never had it. He's never had a realistic chance. The CJ McCollum backcourt was his best one, but he never got another third realistic piece to go with it. The other team that I did think about with OG Anunoby purely because I like the idea of the starting 5 that they could potentially roll out is the Pelicans.
Yeah.
CJ McCollum, OG Anunoby, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Valanciunas. That is a tasty starting 5, I think.
Yeah, I just don't know how they'd trade for him.
Like 16,000 picks.
Yeah, they've got 16,000 picks. They've got like Dyson Daniels. They've got Grand Theft Auto Alvarado. Like they've got some nice little picks that players that they can put with it.
Let's be honest, the Raptors aren't probably going to be bothered with them. It'll be on what.
No, they'll take cap fillers. They'll take salary fillers or a decent player that they can then move on.
But it will come down to the picks for that kind of trade. And with that, I just don't know. They'd have to pay and whether they'd have to just walk away.
I saw that I can't remember where I saw this report that they're actually tempted to do it. So Memphis don't do it, and they've got the draft picks. So like when we said 2 first round draft picks for OG Anunoby is too much, I agree. But when you've already got, I think New Orleans
4,000,
they've got 12, I think, in the next couple. So you can kind of afford to give a couple up, and
they are playing house money at the moment. Essentially, is what they're doing.
Yeah, so that's a good option, and they've been on a bit of a slide recently. I know they don't have Zion, Brandon Ingram's only just coming back, but could give him a boost, I guess. That team is scary good defensively, potentially, with him in there.
The only concern with it, well, I mean, not the concern, but I mean, OG Anunoby earns a ridiculously small amount for the player that he is. I think he's under 20 mil, and he's like that for the rest of his contract, which has still got 2 and a bit years on it. I was looking at this prior. The Pelicans are one of 2 teams that have never paid luxury tax in the NBA, so they're not going to start doing it. If you've done that for that long, you realistically, unless in 3 or 4 years' time, if Zion has really, really kicked on and he's becoming this perennial sort of MVP potential guy, that's when they might start, but they're not going to do it now, right? They owe a lot of money next season to these 3 main guys in their team, in McCollum, Ingram, and Zion. So then what happens in that sort of time frame when you're planning in 2 years? But I know it's all down the line, but that's the only thing with it. OG Anunoby is a really, really good asset for a team right now in terms of the money he makes. That's where, when you're saying like 2 first-round picks again, you've got him secured on a very cheap contract for the next 2 seasons, so you can move him about quite well if you need to move him on afterwards and things like that. So it'll be a domino effect. I think they'll trade them separately. I don't think Gary Trent Jr. will go with him. But I don't know. I love seeing when it starts. It's really, really exciting to see where all these guys end up and going. That's one of my favourite things for it. But is there anyone else that you want to talk about in terms of deadline previews?
Not for me, no.
Nah, I think we're all done on that end.
No, okay. We'll move on to round the podcast out. We'll touch on LeBron to become the all-time scorer. Now, before we jumped into this, whilst we was waiting for Louis to arrive, me and Lewis were discussing LeBron's impact on the court last night and the points that were scored. And I think you were saying that you saw a report that was saying, "Oh, LeBron's going to break the record in the next game." If you haven't been around for the NBA or realised what LeBron's been doing for the past year, every practice session and every shoot around, that man tries a sky hook every time and then gets giddy and excited when he hits it. If you think that man is doing it on an untelevised game against the Thunder, with no one watching, he's not breaking the record then. That man will be either playing, and like you said, Lewis, will hit 35 points and leave himself one off and then not play for the rest of the game, or he's sitting in the game entirely. And that man, do you think he's going to go for a sky hook to tie it up and then like a 3-pointer with Kareem because all of this stuff? Or do you think he's going to go for just a general 3-pointer and a sky hook to break it? That's where there's going to be betting lines on this as well. Because there's never this is like this is like the Super Bowl when you can bet on like the color Gatorade that's going to be thrown. There's going to be something around there. Do you think he breaks the record with a sky hook, or does he tie the record with a sky hook? What are you saying? Because he'll plan every shot out meticulously of what he's doing. Yeah. He'll have it in his head.
I think he breaks it with a sky hook. Genuinely, I know that started off as like a joke, but
he's doing it either to break it or to tie it. Yeah. That's what he's doing. Like he's either tying himself up with a sky hook or he's breaking it with it.
And you've seen him trying it every now and then. I was like, oh, maybe it might happen. But just knowing the optics of the situation, the fact it could be the Bucks, as you say, I saw the Bleacher Report thing. I was like, is he a lock to do it next game? Absolutely not. This man is not going to break it at the Thunder. He's going to do it. He's going to do it in the Bucks game. Yeah, I think he'll break it with a sky hook. I think it's just the storylines and that would surround it. The fact obviously it's against the Bucks, it's just too much of a perfect marriage for anything else.
How many attempts does he get? Say if he misses with the sky hook, how many attempts has he given the sky hook before? Louis,
he could miss 20 in a row and it wouldn't matter, because all that will happen is that highlight reel that will be on SportsCenter, ESPN and Sky Sports News tomorrow when he does it, of him hitting it. They're not going to show the 19 he missed before, they're going to show the one that he hit. So he will have enough of them to do it. He'll probably miss the first one because I can see like the crowd getting all excited when he goes for it and then doesn't. But I mean, also at the same time, if you're Giannis, absolutely no way am I letting you do a sky hook on me in that game. No shot. Giannis's game, his prerogative that game, shut that man down from a sky hook.
Even Brook Lopez, I think he's not going to be happy with something like that going on his head. I don't think anyone wants to be the subject. I don't know, actually. Maybe they're going to... It's not like you're getting dunked on or anything like that, which would be different. It's not like embarrassing to get scored on as the guy who scored the most points in NBA history does it. So maybe that's reading a bit too much into it. I just find it funny. how it's just been so curated. Like he's missed a couple games. Obviously, he was really. I think it was possibly one of the funniest reactions I've ever seen when he didn't get that call in Boston. I know it was a terrible call. It
was a terrible call, mate. It was like he just lost an NBA. It was like he lost in a Series 7. He lost a game for that.
Exactly.
Every game. The thing is every game counts, and then he sat the next game, and I'm like, okay, well, he doesn't really then, does it?
But I will say, in his defense, it wasn't just that Boston game. There was a few games in a stretch where the Lakers were just getting done over by the refs. So if you want to make the excuse that it all came out in that game, then that's fair enough.
I found the referee statement. I'm just looking it up right now. One of the funniest things. The tweet that they sent out after the game, and I couldn't tell whether it was tongue in cheek. I think it probably was slightly, but it was just way over. It was like I can't find it, but it was like we're gonna have like sleepless nights because they missed like one call for LeBron James. Reacted like someone has died. It was unbelievable, but
I think it's more as well that in terms of the shocking thing is that normally the big stars, your LeBrons, your Giannis's, your Lucas, your Hardens, your Embiids, they all get calls that they shouldn't get. So for a time in which probably an outrageously obvious call wasn't given, that's where I think that the sarcasm's come from. There's no way that tweet is sincere. No way.
It's pretty insane that they have these replay, like these, like feels like 20-minute long challenges sometimes for referee decisions, and that is so clearly a foul, and they just couldn't change it. Like they have people, they have like a VAR type of system.
Well, they have the final 2-minute report, didn't they? Yeah.
So I don't understand how that couldn't be changed, but I found it funny personally. I really did.
It kind of reminds me of, I know in the NFL when they're looking for like if someone's got a down or not, and they pull out I can't remember what it's actually called, but it's like it's not a rope. It's not made of rope.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And they use it to measure the distance, and it's like we've come so far in technology that you can't use something else other than that to determine it. And I think that's the same with those kind of things. People get annoyed because you've got the technology to work these things out. But I will say, as we are over in the UK, we like the Premier League. We can attest to how technology can go too far sometimes with what VAR is doing in the Premier League. Maybe that's taking it out of the hands of the refs a bit too much. So it's finding.
Yeah, I don't particularly like the 2-minute report. I don't understand why they do it. Like, oh, hey, yeah, we messed this call up and made a mistake. Just to let you know, we know we made a mistake, but we're going to make a mistake in the future. That's essentially what these things say in all of their gist. I don't know, and I can't see it lasting too much longer, because especially in the playoffs that are coming, if there's a big call miss, like if that happened in a playoff series and they lost because of that, it would have been blown up way more than it has in a regular season game. I can't see
stupid for like a regular.
It has, but I think that's also because of LeBron's reaction of why it blew up, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, you can make the argument as well. It went to overtime; they could have won the game in regular, but that's not the point. If that happens in a playoff game, I think we'll end up seeing a scope in which there's serious discussions made about how in them final 2 minutes, the challenges will be, there'll be an extra one, or you'll get another 2, or there'll be a manual review, or there'll be something or other, or there'll be a ref that is watching the final 2 minutes from a different angle and viewpoint that can intervene and overrule. I think that there will be something along those lines that's brought into the NBA pretty soon, because if that's the reaction that you get off of a regular one, they all mean something at the end of the day. But if it happens when it really does mean something in the playoffs, that's when it will start. But yeah, I mean, it was way out of proportion, but it's what it is.
Pat Bev showing the pic, he had the camera and everything, didn't he?
That was
unreal, to be fair. That was
pretty. I mean, the stuff with, actually, to be fair, I should have done a banner in terms of, we should have spoken about sort of the NBA brawls that have been happening recently, and some of the texts that have been given. The refs are a bit of a joke in terms of like just teching up everybody and throwing people out of games. Like Steph Curry got thrown out for throwing his mouthpiece on the floor. It wasn't like in a massively aggressive way. He didn't hit anyone with it. but he got thrown out. And I'm like, for me, like none of us have flown to America yet to go and watch games. But if we fly all the way to America and in the second minute of a game, like we say we're seeing the Warriors, one, they sit everyone every 3 games anyway, so you have to try and pick and choose what Warriors game you'd go and watch. But if someone got ejected, like if LeBron gets ejected in the Bucks game for doing something ridiculous, that's the only way the script's being ruined. If LeBron says so, gets teed up or they throw him out, that's the only way. But you can't predict it at the moment. That's why I think they need to be a bit more lenient, because at the end of the day, these regular season games especially, people are paying money to go and watch these guys play. They don't care if they throw their mouthpiece. As long as they don't hurt anyone, say anything offensive or all this stuff. Some of the stuff is a bit over the top, I think.
Yeah, but obviously, the refs aren't taking into consideration what the crowd wants to watch and people chanting. But I mean, we could have had a nice little segment with a little banner saying, "Do NBA refs have egos that are too big or something?" Yeah. I know that's a lot of the players. I know there's a few players that would follow that sentiment and think they should, maybe take a bit of more of a back seat.
You've got to have some degree of just, I want to say, like, not emotional intelligence, but just reading the situation a little bit. And I think this is true of any refs in any sport whatsoever. They just need to understand the game a little bit better and know that you're not meant to be like the center of attention or the star here. People aren't here to see you. They're here to see like supremely gifted athletes and with big personalities.
What about supremely gifted referees, Louis? That's the thing. No kid's ever growing up and wants to go and see a referee. That's the end of the line.
It's weird to try and like understand that, like when they decide they want to be like a professional sports referee. It's a very odd decision to take, considering the amount of abuse and how difficult it is. A difficult job. I'm not disrespecting.
Oh, it definitely is.
That. But it's just, it seems like a weird type of thing to try and do.
Indeed, it does. I think that can wrap us up there. Have we got anything else that we want to talk about?
No, that's all.
I think we'll come back after the deadline in terms of, when was it, on the 9th? So we'll record at some stage, sort of, maybe over that weekend or early next week. So we'll reconvene and we'll discuss how it's going to work with Kyrie at the Lakers. Potentially me seeing this in the future. But yeah, we'll wrap that one up there. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you're following us on all of our platforms at Swingman Pod. Check out our website, www.swingmanpod.com, and also our YouTube channel at Swingman Pod on everything, like I mentioned before. Stay safe. Enjoy the deadline. I hope that your team makes the moves that it needs to, and we'll catch you in the next podcast. Thanks for listening. Peace.